When discussing high performers, we often overlook up and coming talent. And today we are highlighting next generation talent. This is Neil Wattier with the Amped Mental Performance Podcast, talking today to John Clayton. John, how you doing, man?
Pretty good, man. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. So John and I met in October when I traveled to the Association for Applied Sports Psychology conference in October in Orlando. John and I happened to be standing in the same area at one of those workshops where there was interactive. Him and I just started talking about the content, and then for the rest of the workshop, kind of chatted on again, off again, and realized that as an up and coming talent, he was somebody that I definitely wanted to stay connected with. And so we exchanged contact information, and here we are, I'm really glad that we connected. You're an undergrad student studying psychology at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. You're looking at master's programs in sports psychology, clinical psychology. You mentioned Ball State, with up and coming goals to be a pro baseball coach, mental performance coach, possibly even a therapist or a counselor, which I think is amazing. And so I really wanted to get into a conversation with you, and I appreciate your time and coming on here. So let's start with that. Let's start with the conference. So Association for Applied Sports Psychology, they're the ones that handle the certified mental performance coaching certification that most mental performance coaches and sports psychologists go into. What was it that took you to the conference? Why were you there?
So as I was getting an idea of what I wanted to do with my life, I had reached out to Dr. Bob Rotella, and I read a couple of his books. I said, well, give me one piece of advice. He said, join AASP. So I did search around their website. I saw there's a regional conference or national conference, and a bunch of the grad schools were going to be there that I could actually talk to them in person. So I thought, I'm going to miss a week of school to do this because it's my future. And I think it's really important to meet face to face and not have them have to choose from a piece of paper. So,
And I love that. It takes, sometimes people are intimidated by that. Sometimes it's a pretty bold move, especially from, hey, you're just finishing up your undergrad. You have to go through your whole the grad school, which, really, 18 months on a mental performance, say like performance psychology. If you're talking clinical, it could be 3, 4, maybe even 5 years. So you're looking way down the road, which I think is amazing. I think that networking is a huge superpower. It's definitely one that you can learn. It's an amazing, powerful, very beneficial skill. And so, first of all, I'll give you kudos for just jumping in and say, you know what, I'm just going to go talk to people. I'm going to go see what this thing is all about. So what was it
yeah,
like while you were there?
a little bit overwhelming. There was about a million different choose your own adventures, and I wasn't sure what kind of adventure I wanted to choose. I really didn't know what to expect, so I just kind of tried to find topics that interested me, go listen, be a part of it. But mainly, the most important part for me was actually on the pool deck or in the classrooms, meeting different people, talking to them, hearing about their experiences, just having an ear to chat to, and also a future reference for any questions or concerns I may have as I go through this journey.
That's cool. Anything that surprised you, that caught you off guard?
Honestly, the time that they allotted for the grad school, I thought was there's so many students there, so many schools, and they left an hour and a half window in a 4 day, 12-hour a day thing. So I thought that was a little short, but it also surprised me how many people were actually there and how many people are involved in sports psychology, and thought it was important enough for them to go to this conference. So
That was cool, man. I was glad to see you there, and honestly, in the conversation when we first started talking, the part about you being a student didn't even come up until later in the conversation, and of course, I'm just being me and just talking to everybody I can think of. I just start talking, as if I thought you were a practitioner already, and you actually held the conversation really well, which I thought was really cool in that if you can be comfortable in an environment even when you're maybe you're scared or overwhelmed or nervous, but you can still hold conversations. I think that's a really powerful skill. Networking is important, communication is important, and the more a mental performance skill, the more you experience something and the more you give yourself an opportunity to grow through it, that's where you get that confidence from. And so what was it like coming home from the conference, um after experiencing all that and then heading back into school? What was your mindset, and what was your follow-up feelings about it?
uh I knew I had to reach out to all the people that I had connected with and touched base with, because I think it's easily lost in everyone's everyday lives. Like, hey, yeah, I met this person one time and I'll never see them again. But I don't. I'm a connection builder. Like that networking, just like you, is just really important to me. And going back to school, I knew that I was on the right track, and I know like this is what I'm in for. This is my life, and just kind of re-energize me, get me back and learning more as much as I can. So
So okay, so that's a good segue. What did bring you here? Why mental performance? Why sports psychology? Why counseling? Why this when there are so many other things you could have done? What brought you here?
yeah, it's a great question. As I was telling you earlier, I just wrote my personal statement, and you have to kind of tie all that together. And like sports have been a huge, if not the biggest part of my life for my whole life. I've been playing sports on and off my whole life, and watch them, play them, talk about them, any of that. So that's the sports angle. And then a few years back, I talked to a therapist and like went to therapy, and just the results from my own mental game, like I just felt so much better and feel like a new person. And I think it's important to now give back. Since the therapy helped me so much become a better version of myself, I wanted to share that with someone else and let them get a chance to be a better version of themselves, which in turn I think will make them a better athlete.
Nice. What did your sports journey look like? Where did what was it, what sports did you play? What level? Like what did that look like for you growing up?
Yeah, in high school I played baseball and football, and then after high school continued with softball, flag football, those kind of things. And then I moved to Denver about 10 years ago and got into Australian rules football.
That's
Um,
right. Okay. I was trying to figure out what our conversation was about. So yeah, Australian rules football.
yeah, so the reason I was in Florida to begin with was our national tournament was in Tampa that weekend before the ASP conference. So I just drove over after that and went to the conference. So yeah.
Nice. So how did that happen? Because I like Australian rules football in Denver, Colorado. Like how did that connection happen for you?
So I met a kid and he said, hey man, like I know you're into sports. I play this sport called Australian football. Why don't you come check it out? I'm like, all right, I gave it a try. Really loved it. Just hanging around the guys, it's just like another community, another family for me. And yeah, it just kind of took off from there.
That's cool. So are you still playing as you continue through your education?
I am, yeah. I live in Milwaukee now, so it's kind of hard because I still play for the Denver team. So I don't get out to practice as much as I used to, but I still train and do as much as I can by myself. But it's not an easy sport to practice on your own.
Yeah, I've watched a little bit about that. It's when I was early in my Air Force career, it was so random. Like I don't for whatever reason at that time, they were showing a lot of Australian rules football, and I turned it on, and it seemed pretty easy to kind of pick up the general idea behind the sport. Like you kick it down the field, you run down the field, try to kick it between the poles. Like it was super basic, and I know there's a whole bunch more to it than that, right? But it was simple. The idea was simple enough. It was basically just keep the ball moving, right, and just keep going and go. And I coach rugby now, and there's the sports are different, but the idea behind it is let's keep the game moving, and that's what drew me to it. Even though I wasn't necessarily able to really get into it long term, but for whatever reason, that short time that it was on TV was really exciting, and I tended to watch it anytime I could come across it, and it was very exciting. So you mentioned that the you said it was the national championship in Orlando. How's your experience been coming from a baseball football background then to play this like totally obscure
Yeah,
sport? Like where'd this come from?
yeah, it's kind of a mix of a lot of different sports. It originally started as cricketers trying to stay fit during the off season, so they kind of invented this new sport. It moves a lot like soccer. It's physical like rugby and American football. Um, the part for me that is the hardest is the kicking because I didn't play soccer. I wasn't a kicking sport guy, so That part's pretty tough, but I like the physicality of it. It's a fast-paced game, so you have to stay fit, and I really enjoy like the difficulty of it, honestly.
Okay. So what's, you talk about, you had one of your instructors had mentioned Association for Applied Sports Psychology, also known as ASP. And then, the encouragement to go into the career field. So now that you're back in school, you took a little bit of time off, you went to this tournament, you went to the conference. What did you learn during and after the conference, as far as what are your expectations leading into your graduate work, specifically? Let's start there. So what your undergrad, you're finishing up your undergrad, you talked about wanting to go to Ball State. What are your expectations and anticipation about, as well as maybe some things that might still be a little unsure heading into your graduate work?
Yeah, I read a lot of journal articles for school, and anytime I come across one that's about sports or exercise, I actually enjoy it and understand it. So I'm looking forward to learning a lot more through past research. My background is not in research. I don't know a lot about research, but I know that I'm going to be getting a heavy dose of it. Um, so that's kind of exciting, but also nerve-wracking at the same time. But just learning the different techniques that a person can use for mental performance is good for my own benefit, but as well as like helping someone else out, you know?
Well, knowing that you're going to be going through your grad school, and that's where the majority of your, like, the details of the skills and the theories and the strategies and all that. But what, being an athlete, and going through the undergrad part of, you mentioned you're doing general psychology, but there's still some discussion about, even general psychology touches on some of the performance stuff and some of the skills. What are some of the things that you used without realizing it, and then when you went through school you're like, oh, that's what I was doing?
That's funny. A lot of the visualization, I remember reading an article about Michael Phelps back in the day about how he visualized his races and uh, actually won a gold medal with his goggles completely filled up. I don't know if you know that story or
I
not,
do
but
know that story. It's a great story.
it's probably the most amazing sports feat in all time, in my opinion only. But so I do like, I play a lot of golf, and visualization of the shot that I'm about to take and staying in the present moment, and not thinking about the next shot or next hole or anything. So I think that is something I didn't really ever realize, but it's a big part of my golf game.
Yeah. So what are some of the other things that maybe you've learned about, that could have been beneficial later on, that now makes more sense? Oh yeah, I should be doing that. What are some of the things that you're working on now?
I'm really working on being kind to myself. I think that's really important. I don't play golf every day. Um, as any good golfer or any golfer would know, it's a very frustrating sport. Um, so I'm just trying not to, like, if I hit a bad shot, not get angry, not throw or break clubs, just kind of trying to just be a little bit nicer to myself. I think that's really important for everyday life as well.
Yeah, and that's, ironically, I just recorded an episode, and so the way that this is going to lay out, we're talking about this, but the episode is going to be released later. So the episode I just released will release before this one. That's a little Back to the Future timeline for you. But so I was actually just recording an episode talking about, the person that you talk to most is yourself, and like, stop being so mean to yourself, right? I've struggled with that too. There's a lot when it comes to self-concept and self-belief and confidence and competence and all those things that you go into deep in psychology classes. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding when people hear things like self-esteem and self-confidence and stuff like that. Like, it sounds so flowery and like, oh my gosh, we're talking about, this again. But I think the conversation is misunderstood, because you don't build confidence and self-esteem by focusing on confidence and self-esteem. Like, they're the result. It's almost like emotions. Like, you shouldn't worry about being happy, you should worry about being effective and fulfilled, and then you feel happy, right? And so I
Mhm.
think there's something to be said for the power of self-talk and the power of perception and the power of trusting the process of even in the frustrating moments. Like, you got to take a breath, you got to use visualization and try to figure out, okay, how can I just focus on the next shot? There's nothing I can do about it. And that's a lot of what we do in mental performance. And of course, it's much easier said than done. Like,
For sure.
don't confuse simple with easy. Like, what we do is really simple, but that doesn't mean that it's easy. Because I get it. Like, I'll go golfing with my wife and she's like, man, you are really upset. Like, you need to work on your breathing techniques. And I'm like, yo, who's coaching who now?
Yeah, I know it's easy to get lost in the, like I think the biggest problem is we watch the pros. They don't hit bad shots. They miss by 6 feet, they're upset.
Yeah. Right.
And
Well, and the
it
social
translates.
comparison is tough. Like,
Yeah,
and you even said it. You're like, I don't play very often. I rarely play, and I need to get back to it, especially being here in Phoenix. It's, the weather's finally starting to turn nice. I need to get back out and play, and I'm just preparing myself. Like, man, you haven't played in 6 months. You better be ready for a tragedy.
I sometimes feel the opposite. I feel like if you haven't played in 6 months, things are going to go great.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? I was talking to that about who was I talking to? About the power of visualization. It was actually a client of mine who golfs a lot, and used the analogy of this person who was Air Force pilot who was shot down in Vietnam. And while he was in Vietnam, he was in the Hanoi Hilton for years and years. One of the things that he did as his therapy to get him through was visualization, because he was a big golfer. He would imagine himself playing golf for these, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years that he was in prison. When he
Jeez.
came home and he went through his therapy and transition and all that stuff, he went to go play again. His first round back after being in prison for like 7 years was a phenomenal round, because he had used visualization for so long. He just went out there and do what he had been doing every day for 7 years. And so, yeah, visualization is extremely powerful. Self-talk is very powerful. And just the idea of giving yourself grace, and I use that term a lot, and some people kind of get confused. Well, what do you mean by that? And then it's just what you said. Like, just be kind to yourself. Like, you're not a pro golfer, you're just playing for fun. You're not even playing for a scholarship. Like, you might be bragging rights or beers with a buddy or something like that. Like, what are you getting so upset about? Stop being so mean to yourself.
Yeah, and I think that it's great on the golf course, but literally everyday life, like anything can be, why did you do that? Why were you so dumb? I can't believe you're so stupid. Why would you be like that? Like just stop. You just become aware of it, and the more you become aware of it, the more you can shut it down. And I think it's a great way to get through everyday life.
And great, and see, and that's why I like talking through this stuff. You don't have to be a pro. You're saying all the right things. You're not even the mental performance coach yet. You're still going through your education. You're applying everything that you've talked about. You're applying all the skills that's been discussed. um I say all the time, self-awareness is the first step, because if you're not self-aware, what are you regulating? And so the idea that just becoming aware of how you talk to yourself, like, at first, don't try to change it, just be aware of it and breathe through it, right? Those little kind of things, and then making incremental changes down the road. So that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, especially in this day and age, we expect everything fast now, yesterday. But I think it's more of a lifelong process of getting rid of the bad habits and then implementing better ones.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So what does that look like for you? I mean, as playing Australian rules football, you're going to school. We talk about habits of excellence and routines. And what does that look like for you as a student? How do you use those type of skills to get yourself through the workload and the expectations?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for me to get through the workload is, or I guess it's two main focuses for me. It's, yeah, I have 27 things to do, but right now I'm just going to work on this one thing. And then when I'm done with that one thing, I can worry about item number two. I think those are very good points. And then the other one I use a lot is, all right, I can't focus anymore on this. I'm just going to take a 10-minute break instead of trying to push through. Like you're not giving yourself any help, you know? Like nothing's sinking in. So why don't you just walk away, do something you enjoy for 10 minutes, do 10 push-ups, go grab a burger, whatever makes you happy, and then get back
That's
to it.
that's a great point. And and it's funny. People are like, oh, you can't work all the time. And I'm like, yeah, but I love this stuff. I want to talk about it all the time. And so I was talking to my two boys, 9 and 11. They've got one of those miniature basketball hoops, and we I don't mind, I was one of those. My mom was one of those. No balls on the house. You're gonna break a lamp, and I'm like, I don't have any lamps. Like, just play ball in the house. You're fine. And so they're out there playing, and one of them was getting really frustrated. And we've had a lot of conversations over the last 2 to 3 years. I mean, at 9 and 11, that they were learning this stuff at 6 and 7 or 8 years old. So they love this stuff. And one of them was getting upset and really frustrated because his bigger brother was beating him, and he couldn't get anything done. And I'm like, you're really frustrated right now. And he's like, no, I'm not. I'm just not any good. And I'm like, no, that's actually, and so of course then, like, we have the talk. I'm like, no, that's unhealthy self-talk. And he's like, yeah, you're right. And it's like, you just need to take a break. You're just really frustrated. Well, it's halftime. Go to your room and do some breathing and relax for a little bit. And sure enough, he came back a little bit later, and, a snack. I think he was a little hangry too, but, he came back out. And I'm like, you made a good point. Like, it's not just about sports. It's not just about the one performance area, because how you do one thing is how you do everything. And we're talking about, be kind to yourself in every area of your life. Use the skills in every area of your life: self-talk and breathing and visualization. Guy I work with, he's on the road doing sales a lot, and sometimes he's gone for 4 or 5 days. He now uses visualization techniques on the flight and drive home from the airport, so that when he gets home, he has an image in his mind of how his welcome home is going to go, so that he can come home and not be tired and grumpy from the plane ride and whatever happened on the business trip. He comes home and he's present with his wife as he's transitioning home. And so, it's a great point. Yeah, you need to be able to make sure that you're doing these things in every area of your life. It's not just about your golf game.
Yeah, and every day do a little something to make yourself better than you were before, or help cement those foundational things of awareness, or being nice to yourself. So, and just any of those things, just do a little bit every day, I think is a really beneficial piece of advice.
Yeah. So if you could, so looking forward, whether that be, 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever, as you progress through your grad school and internships and all this stuff. So you graduate from school, if you could wave a magic wand, what's your ideal job? What do you want to do?
Baseball has always been my favorite sport ever since I was a kid. I think my dad and my uncle used to take me to games in Milwaukee or Chicago, and I that was the first sport I ever really played, was baseball. And so it's just like every playoff season, no matter what, like I'm just on the couch watching playoff baseball. I don't think there's anything better. So I think working for a professional baseball team as either a clinical therapist or a mental performance coach would be my ideal job. I know, like, graduation going to the pros is probably not ideal, but eventually that's where I'd love to land.
Hey man, you know what? Other people have done it. Why not you? And I think that realistic optimism, like, I don't want to paint you paint a vision, and that's interesting and all, but a lot of times we say that, like, the outcome is largely outside of your control, but it's still cool to have a vision and hope. And other people have done it, so why not you? Why not get an internship and then get hired onto a baseball team? Why not? And there's a lot of places that you can do what we do. I love working with firefighters and other first responders. I love working with military members. I just did a webinar recently for insurance professionals. Like, it's so crazy how we can apply our education and experience for just that, like you said, not just one area, but how can you be as effective as possible in every area of your life? And I think it's great to have an ideal, which is why I like to ask that question. Like, if you could be where you want to be, what would that look like? And I think it's cool. And baseball is big enough. I know teams that have 3 or 4, sometimes
Yeah.
5 mental health and mental performance professionals. We talked before we came on the podcast, of the importance of people understanding their roles. Like, okay, so maybe you're a licensed counselor with a sports psychology profession, education specialty. Does that mean that you can do clinical and performance? Maybe, right? But not everybody can do everything. So what is your specialty within mental health or counseling or performance? And so I think there's a room enough for everybody. It's not just one person on a team does all this stuff. I think that we as professionals are better when everybody understands that there is probably a defined lane that they stay in, and they do that really, really well. So kudos to you for having such big plans.
Yeah, like I said, it's been brewing for several years. I went to college when I was young, just wasn't for me at that time. Did a lot of years in construction, and then ended up honestly hurting my back and deciding it was time for I wanted to play golf when I was 60, so I decided it was time for a change, and that's kind of how I got back into it. So
That's awesome, man. So what are some of your other thoughts? Good, bad, concerns, excitement, like what's on your mind as you're traveling through this journey?
yeah, I think a lot about the different athlete personalities, and mental health is still kind of seen as I have a problem versus I can make myself better. And a lot of people don't believe in it when everything comes through your brain. There's no part of your life that doesn't come through your brain. So I'm just wanting to be able to reach out to everyone, but also at the same time knowing not everyone's going to be open to it and ready for it. But uh, I still think that this is the right path for me, and I'm really excited to get started. I know it's a couple more years. I have a 3 more years in school, but I'm itching to get out and just like get a taste of it. So
Well, don't wait. Yeah, I mean, there's always service opportunities, and I encourage you to, I'm glad that you and I connected. You and I have commented a couple of times, like this is something we want to stay in touch, and I think this is a really cool connection. And I'm glad that I met you at the conference, and I'm excited for you in your journey. It sounds awesome. And you said, so are you? You said Ball State for your master's program. Are you dedicated to that, or are you still considering?
uh, I just talked to them the other day, and they said 75 people applied, 7 or 8 get in,
Oh,
and that's kind of across the board pretty much. I mean, there's about 50 applicants for about 5 to 10 spots. So
okay.
uh, I don't know. I just know in my heart that Ball State's the right place for me, but that doesn't mean that they're gonna see it the same way. So I'm open to other opportunities. I just really want to get into sports and clinical. So I'm just open to other programs of that nature.
Okay. Well, and that's a great example of you do the best you can, but the outcome is largely outside of your control. Like you said, like you could be the best candidate in your mind. Maybe you are the best candidate, but that's still not a guarantee. Like
Yeah.
there's other people, there's some type of considerations out there that you have to accept, that whether you're talking about life, business, sports, outcome tends to be largely outside of your control. You do what you can, and you have this goal in your vision, and you want to drive for it. You have to understand that it may not happen, and it's not that you need a plan B. It's you have to be mentally adaptable. Go drive for your dreams, and I'm really hoping for you, because it sounds like Ball State is a great place. Sounds like you're really dedicated to it, and I hope you get it. I'll keep up with you and understand. So when are we looking at, like, application selection? What's the timeline for that?
Yeah, so applications are due January 15th. Like I said, I got a chance to speak with them in person at the ASK conference. Both Dr. Blom and Dr. LeBeau were both there, and they're the two heads of the department. So I think that was a huge advantage for me. So they're due the 15th, and then school starts, I believe, in early May, or sorry, early August of
Okay.
next year. So I graduate in May of this coming fall or spring. So the timeline is get my application in. Actually, I'm hoping to get it in before Thanksgiving,
Okay.
and then try to apply to a couple other schools. Maybe it's just like a little bit of a backup plan, and
Yep.
then enjoy my holiday.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, you know what? And I think that's a good point. Like you get it in, you do what you can, you control what you can control, and then you have to let everything else go. Like you have to let go of that responsibility, and
Yeah,
it's okay to be emotional, and if you get it, be happy. If you don't, be frustrated. But you recognize that, man, I did everything that I could. And it sounds like that's the path that you're on, that you're controlling what you can control. You're taking the steps, you're following the process, you're trusting the process, which is something we talk a lot about in mental performance. Trust the process. And then you have to let it, whatever the outcome is going to be the outcome. And, I trust that regardless of what the path is, like the path from A to B is not always here. Sometimes it's down here and up here. And you've got a great attitude. It sounds like, you're going to get to where you want to go. I know it. Whatever that path is, it'll be interesting to see. And of course, being connected, I'm going to be very anxious and excited to hear what that result is come spring, when you graduate and start figuring out where you're going to be going. But I'm confident that you're going to get there. It'll just be interesting to see what that path looks like.
Yeah, man, I appreciate the positivity. It helps me out a lot because most days I'm positive, but we can't have every day be the best day. So
yeah, I think that's what the other thing that we talked a lot about is that, the mindfulness, present moment focus, the realistic optimism. I like to add the realistic part because you can't just be blindly optimistic about everything. Like, I get it. But there has to be some realism to them, because realism helps you when things don't go your way, and maybe you don't get your way, you don't get the wins. What are you going to do about it? Right. I always say lead with empathy and accountability. And, when you get it, I'm going to be excited for you. If you don't, then I'm going to, give you some empathy and say, yeah, that sucks. What are we going to do about it? And then see what I can do to help support. And so, of course, I'm here for you as a mentor and a friend. Whatever you need, I'm here for you. I'm cheering for you. And I'm really excited that we were able to connect on the conference.
Yeah, man, that was great. Like, I didn't think just one little chat would lead to lifelong friendship, possibly a lifelong friendship, and then a chance to get on a podcast too. So I think it's really, really cool.
Listen to you go. Listen to you go. I love it, man. So this has been great. I really appreciate your time. It gives us a chance to as that cliffhanger. People like a cliffhanger. What's part 2 going to look like? We're going to have you back when we have some more information as far as, what does the path look like? And then we're going to catch everybody up as far as where, what's John doing? Where's John today?
Cool. Yeah. I really appreciate you having me on, man.
Yeah, you bet. Have a great day.
All right. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Amped Mental Performance Weekly Podcast, your source for optimal mental performance coaching. I have 2 tasks for you this week. First, choose one action from today's conversation to implement in your life. Second, share this podcast and community with someone who values their mental performance. I appreciate your direct message feedback and would appreciate your online review of the podcast. Your honest rating and review help me improve the show and helps others find our community. Visit Arizona Mental Performance Training on all the popular social media outlets and at ArizonaMPT.com.